Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jai Jai Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda.
Jai Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
What is on the board?
35 to 37, 37 is written.
No, within the Chaitanya Charitamrita. 124. So, reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 24, explanations of the Atmaram verse, text 124.
Maharaj, could we have some open windows?
I cannot hear you, Maharaj.
Could we have some open windows? So
Anywhere except near me. It's, I'm sorry, I mean, for me it's freezing here. I just came from nice South Africa. It's just... Se Savare Sadhushange Gunashpuraya. Krishna Bhajan Kare Mumuksha Chadaya. Se Savare Sadhushange Gunashpuraya. Krishna Bhajana Karya Mumuksha Chadaya. Sheshabhaya Sadhu Sanghe Gunashpuraya. Krishna Bhajana Karya Mumuksha Chadaya. Sheshabhaya Sadhu Sanghe Gunashpuraya. Krishna Bhajana Karya Mumuksha Chadaya. Translation. If those who are attached to demigod worship fortunately associate with the devotees, their dormant devotional service and appreciation of the Lord's qualities gradually awaken. In this way they also engage in Krishna's devotional service and give up the desire for liberation and the desire to merge into the existence of the impersonal Brahman. Purport. The four Kumaras, Chatusana, Sukadeva Goswami and the 9 Yogendras were absorbed in Brahman realization, and how they became perfect devotees is described herein. There are 3 kinds of impersonalists: the Mumuksa, those desiring liberation; the Jivan Mukta, those liberated in this life; and the Prapta Swarupas, those merged in Brahman realization. All 3 types of jnanis are called Mokshakankis, those desiring liberation. By associating with devotees, such people give up the mumuksha principle and render devotional service. The real cause for this change is the association of devotees. The Krishna conscious movement is meant to attract all types of men, even those who desire other things than the Lord's devotional service. Through the association of devotees, they gradually begin to render devotional service. Om Jnanatimirandasya Girana Salakaya Sakshuram Vitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manodistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Madhamayam Padati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Sri Tapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Savanaravantam Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Pajana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Savana Lalita Sri Sakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinananda Jagatpate Gopesha Gopina Kanta Radhakanta Namastute Tapta Kancana Gaurangi Radhe Nameshwari Vishamanu Sutadevi Pranamani Hari Priye Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this verse describes exactly what happened to us. We were all somehow or other attached to sense enjoyment, attached to philosophical misconceptions, plenty of impersonalism, and if there was any demigod worship at all, then that would have been very pious. Because in most cases, worship was not so much in the foreground at all. Yet, due to the association of the devotees, somehow or other, our life has changed. The devotees are the caretakers of the mercy of the Supreme Lord. Dharmam tu saksat bhagavat praditam. All religious principles begin with Krishna, with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, no one can fabricate anything. Therefore, everything comes down in disciplic succession. Evam parampara pratam imam rajarsyo vidu. It begins simply with Krishna. And therefore, Krishna is the original spiritual master. Particularly in Balaram, he manifests that feature, but there's no difference between Krishna and Balaram. Krishna also is always teaching. When Krishna performs his daily activities in Dwarka, he's teaching the world. And Krishna, he is, in the morning, he's meditating on himself. Not that one should also then think, we should meditate on ourselves. No, we should meditate on Krishna. That is the point. So even Krishna was meditating on Krishna because there is no one else to meditate on but Krishna. So that is what Krishna is showing us. Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayana. If we become absorbed in only Vasudeva, only Krishna, then the result is agam dulvati karsneya nihara iva vaskara. Then all the sinful desires will disappear from the heart, even with the root. even the very root will disappear. One can, in the beginning of the 6th canto, where this verse comes from, in the beginning, in the 6th canto, we begin a discussion between Sukadev Goswami and Maharaj Pariksit, and Maharaj Pariksit is inquiring as to what is the essence of life, and Sukadev Goswami says, Prayaschita, atonement for one's sinful activities, and performing various austerities and so on to become purified from sinful activities. And Maharaj Pariksit, since he is not a passive listener, Maharaj Pariksit is an engaged listener who hears what what Sukadev Goswami is saying and is thinking about it. So Maharaj Pariksit was thinking, that doesn't make sense, because as a king, as an emperor, I have seen so many cases of where some punishment was given, some atonement had to be performed for some sinful activity, but it didn't really make any change. As soon as the punishment was over, the person again committed the same sinful activity, because the root in the heart is still there. But the process of devotional service actually can change the root in our heart, can completely change everything. It can take away our attachment to material desires, to desires, to sinful activities, because it can give us new desires. Srila Prabhupada makes the point, not that we should become desireless. To be desireless, no, that is not our point. Even those who are free from material desires, the Atmaramas, Samuniyo, Nirgranti Apyo Rukrame, even those who are free from material desires and therefore are satisfied. Whoever is controlled by material desires will have to face a lot of anxiety. Bhayam dvitya vinivesita syat, as soon as we turn away from Krishna, as soon as we place our faith in anything other than Krishna, as soon as we think that happiness is found outside of Krishna, there will be anxiety. And to the degree that our desires are directed towards other things than Krishna, even as devotees, we still experience anxiety. But one whose only interest is the interest of Krishna, one who has no other desire than to satisfy Krishna, is free from anxiety and becomes a Vaikuntha man. Kunta means anxiety, and Vaikuntha means without anxiety, a resident of the spiritual world. So this is our purpose. Savai pumsa paru dharmo yato bhakti adokshaje haitikya patiyata yayatna supatiyati. We wish to come to pure and unalloyed devotional service, so that the heart can become completely satisfied in serving Krishna. Serving Krishna is serving Krishna is our only aim, our only pleasure, simply our only wealth. There is nothing else. Our only possession. Nothing else we possess. We have the illusion that we possess many things. This land is mine. These things are mine. So many things are mine. But that's an illusion. Time will definitely sever these relationships that we have with anything material. Even our body. Even that is not really ours. Even that belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. There's another passage from Chaitanya Charitamrita, which I think is to be highlighted, which is Sanatana Goswami's situation where his body had become contaminated by sores. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was touching his body in Jagannath Puri, embracing him. It's too much, too much. Sanatana Goswami was just thinking, this is the greatest offense, I'll give up this body. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu pointed out, no, your body, you have already surrendered to me. You have surrendered to me, that means mind, body and words. So your body is my property, not yours. So, yes, we are the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual master is sometimes called the postman, sometimes called the messenger of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And therefore, really, we are the property of Krishna. Of course, the spiritual master, on behalf of Krishna, is also considering us his property. And he can do anything and everything. And I remember I was in Nuvraja Mandal one time, and in the middle of the temple room there is a pillar which is a perfect danda parking. So, you know, as a sannyasi, danda parkings are attractive. So I noted that, you know, and there's this nifty little light which just supports the danda perfectly as you place it on the ledge. So I had it there, and right at hand, you know, whenever you want it. So a very convenient place. And I remember that Jayadvaita Maharaj, he visited there, and with his danda and so on. And then at one point, he took my danda also. And then I had left it there, although I was in the temple room. And then he took my danda also, and he walked around with it for a while. And for a moment I was thinking, is he going to give it back? That's how he is, you know. I mean, sort of like, I definitely got the message that it was still his property. That it was his property, and not really mine. And that he allows me to carry it. And then he walked past sort of and said, have a danda. It was an enlightening moment, because really I could understand everything I have is his property, and he allows me to use it, that's all. And I better use it properly, that was quite clear. And that is the situation. Those in this room who are my disciples, everything you have is mine. Just that, you know, I'm allowing you to use it. And that's it, but, you know, I have to take it back anytime. Just that, you know. But for now, I'm happy you're using it and not me. Because the spiritual master is not desiring to bring all these things, to say, yes, this is all mine, and a huge quantity of different goods are piling up and are to be used in Krishna's service. So no, better you keep all the things, and better you use them in Krishna's service, and better you do something with them for Krishna, right? But only for Krishna, not for sense gratification. That is not allowed, strictly forbidden. So in this way, these things, the relationships are unfolding. So I was thinking today, should I give any special message? And then I was thinking, should I maybe go through the Chaitanya Charitamrita and select a special verse. And then, well, partially because of laziness, I admit, partially because of laziness, I was thinking, no, every verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is special. It is. And why would I select one as special when every single verse is special? Or rather, even expand that principle. Why highlight anything when everything about this Krishna consciousness is special? And I thought maybe that should be my message. I thought maybe my message should be that everything, in every aspect of Krishna consciousness is special, and every aspect of Krishna consciousness should be given, therefore, special attention, special respect, everything has special importance. It is no doubt that chanting Hare Krishna is especially important, but hearing Srimad Bhagavatam is also especially important. Taking Krishna Prasadam is especially important. Offering obeisances is especially important. Visiting Krishna's temples is especially important. Bowing down to the Vaishnavas, one should pay special attention to it. Where marking one's body in 12 places with tilak is especially important. All these things are especially important. I used to, when it came to the tilak in earlier days, during the day I was always putting, but at night, you know, especially in India, it's hot, you take a shower at night, and then sometimes I would just crash and sleep. But now I don't. I always put, even before taking rest. I put because it's very important. Because every detail is important. Because it is all these small things together that actually offer us strength. It is all these seemingly trivial things, you know, whether you put the tilak and whether you put it in 12 places or just on the face, you know. But we are actually invoking the presence of the Lord as we are placing the tilak and chanting the various mantras. The various deities of the Lord are present. So the blessings are there. So maybe this leads into the theme of collecting blessings. Collecting blessings is really what we are here for. Because when it comes to spiritual strength, on our own we don't really have any. I don't think there's anybody except for some very advanced devotees, but most of us, no. We are not having that much strength. So seeking blessings, seeking shelter, that is the only thing we can do. Constant. Therefore, a lot of hearing, a lot of chanting, a lot of service, a lot of these things is what is required. It's not... When spiritual life becomes a routine, then of course it's very powerful. There's no doubt about it. It is a transcendental routine, so whatever little thing we do is very powerful. But I think the mentality to think, well, this will do, is not a good mentality. I think the mentality should be to think, it may not be enough. And what if it is not enough? What if it is not enough to attract Krishna's mercy? mercy of Krishna cannot be taken for granted. Therefore, as soon as we start thinking, well, I think I'm doing reasonably well. I think by common standards, one ought to say that I am doing reasonably well. So I think I can be satisfied. Well, of course, I can agree with that to an extent, but still, I myself, I cannot ever think like that. I can never think like that. It's not possible. Because I'm afraid to think like that. I have a fear, which is that I might be satisfied, but is Krishna going to be satisfied? And if he's not going to be satisfied, then what will happen in the end? What will be the result? Therefore, I think, well, I better go the extra mile. Now, to balance this statement, it is not a statement which is meant to drive people into over-endeavor. Over-endeavor is where we begin to push ourselves in spiritual life, but actually we harm our sadhana, we harm our health, we harm Krishna's interest. Then you speak, it is in Krishna's interest that we maintain our body in good condition so that it remains a suitable tool. There is really no heroism in taking bath in ice water when 20 years later one is bent over with arthritis and seriously slowing down in service. I know about these things. So, what can we say? Over-endeavor is not what I'm advocating when I'm sort of speaking about going the extra mile. But when I speak about the extra mile, it's also not fanaticism. Then one might say, well, it's his nature. Now that may be true to an extent, is that I have a nature which is, in Vedic astrology, I have a Leo rising, what to do, the lion. Right? So lions are not pussycats, and so what to do about that? And then, in astrology, upon the planets, there are also stars, which are at a greater distance, and these stars give a particular influence. So in my case, there is a star, a nakshatra, which makes me a lion on the chase. So I'm not your lazy lion lying in the sun. I try sometimes, but I can't. I wish I could sometimes. I have my moments that I thought, I wish I could just do nothing. But there is no such thing. But when I wish those wishes, what is really, it's not a great benefit to that, because the real benefit is there in service. The reason why I brought this little bit of astrology into the lecture is to point out that there is nature. Like Krishna Kshetra Maharaj, I like to call him his relaxedness. No, not that relaxed. Rather like happy and relaxed. Sort of like, your normal face is fun. Like this, That's like, I've never seen Maharaj uptight all these years. I'm the opposite. I get uptight about things all the time. but like these Vyasa Pujas make me uptight. You know, so many people, and I have relationships with everybody, and they're all here, and they all want to talk to me, and how am I going to talk to all of them? It's impossible. The only way I can talk to all of you is through the microphone now. So that's about it. And here and there catch some of you, but not all of you. It's impossible. But I find that Krishna Chaitanya Maharaj, he knows how to deal with everything in a relaxed way. Yeah, I'm learning from Maharaj this art of becoming relaxed in Krishna's service. So natures are different, but still, each of these natures have to be adjusted for the sake of Krishna. When I was in Vrindavan in 1978, I became involved in the restaurant, and on the first day they asked me to help out serving in the restaurant prasadam. The second day, the manager of the restaurant left, and I was the manager of the restaurant. That was my second day in Krishna consciousness. And then that day, there was a chapati cook, a Bengali chapati cook, a young man, and he was just rolling chapatis and chapatis and chapatis and chapatis. So at one point, all the restaurant was empty, all the guests had left, and I'm coming down to the kitchen, and the chapati cook was rolling chapatis like a machine, one after the other. So I'm saying, no, it's no more people, finished. Nothing, no reaction, he kept on. So I somehow tried, with gestures, sign language, didn't work. He kept on rolling chapatis. So at one point, you know how you make chapatis, maybe not, but they have something called the tawa, which is like a hot plate with a handle on the fire, and that's where you actually cook the chapati on, right? So, at one point he's throwing the chapatis on the tawa, and next moment, he didn't stop rolling. So at one point I took him by the arm and I said, no. Then he raised the tawa, red hot, and just sort of threatened me with it, and a stream of agitated Bengali language came from his mouth. At that point, I took a step back and I remembered some important words at that moment. But I realized very much that I had to learn a language, and I decided on Hindi because he also spoke Hindi. So then Krishna said, I learned some Hindi. This Bengali cook, by the way, made a big riot. Many people came and he made a big riot, and people were all blaming me for attacking him and things like that. Anyway, I played humble pie that day, but about 10 days later I fired the guy. Mercilessly. And then I got a new cook, and that was Rohini Kumar Prabhu, a senior Prabhupada disciple, who spoke many languages and who was my chapati cook. So but Rohini Kumar always had some issues with dysentery, and then he would just sleep anywhere. I would open a cupboard and he would be inside. So it's a bit of a problem when your chapati cook is sometimes in the cupboard, sometimes sleeping on the banks of Atta, wherever he could. He needed to. His dysentery was bad. So I do not wish to criticize, but that was the situation, and it was difficult. So at one occasion, 25 people walk into the restaurant. They wanted 25 thalis, that means 4 chapatis each. So I called down to the kitchen, 100 chapatis! And I was serving those people, and in India they are not politely waiting. They were banging their cups on the table and saying, chapatis! So I called down to the kitchen, chapatis, and there were no chapatis. Nothing was coming. So finally I got agitated and I called down, chapatis! And then suddenly, from the door, this person came flying out. It was Rohini Kumar. He did a flying jump. And on his finger, he had made from chapati dough the head of a joker. He put it under my nose and he says, no chapati. And he said, no chapatis because the chapati cook quits right now. That was exciting. Anyway, I realized though something from that incident with the chapati dough. And I realized that natures have their good sides and their bad sides in devotional service. And that we have to use our natures to the advantage of Krishna. And when you have a fiery nature, sometimes you have to just cool it. And when you have a very cool nature, sometimes you got to get a bit hot for Krishna. We have to make adjustments for Krishna, whatever it is, whatever it takes. And we have to have that willingness to be like chapati dough and to be shaped into different forms, just like the joker in the card game can just adjust to whatever card it is placed. Whatever card you place it next, it takes on those qualities. So very kind of, we have to be like that for Krishna service, and to be ready to change and to rise to the occasion, which means to do anything and everything that is required. And you can't, in the material world, you can't say, well, I'm not trained for this type of engagement. But in Krishna consciousness, it doesn't work, because there is always to just surrender Prabhu mantra, which, I have sometimes mentioned. They ask you, can you cook? You say, no, not particularly. I said, oh, it's easy. Just put some water on the stove and some rice and this, that. Half an hour later there's khichdi, and 1 week later you're in charge of the kitchen. And all Krishna will empower us. But it is true that Krishna will empower us. And it is true that we depend on Krishna's empowerment. That with the empowerment of Krishna, there is nothing, without it, there's nothing we can do. And even with all the talents in the world, I mean, even if you sing like a Gandharva, not every morning you wake up with the golden voice, I'm like sort of struggling a bit today. What to say? And Raj Krishna is drinking hot water, all in the hope that it will work. Because Saptake Purusam Nisu means I am the ability in man, Krishna says. Everything is simply a gift from Krishna. And therefore, we are using our gifts. And where we're not so gifted, we just try and do the best we can, and in the hope that Krishna will help us. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada was saying, impossible is the word in a fool's dictionary, because of the principle of empowerment. And that is important, that we are contemplating that principle of empowerment, that therefore our limitations do not apply. Otherwise, we start to think logically. I know myself, I'm not a kid. I've been around. I'm not new. I've been around. I know what I can do. I know what I can not do. I mean, really, I know how I can stretch myself, but certain things I know I just cannot do. I know. Not necessarily when the Krishna factor is there. Then we can surprise ourselves. I didn't know I could do it. With Krishna's help, anything can be done. Anyway, so I think I've sort of pushed enough on the aspect of trying to make an endeavor for Krishna. I think I've highlighted the endeavor element. But let me now shift a little bit to the other aspect of situating ourselves. And I think in the there is the story where one sannyasi was very dear to Srila Prabhupada and very dedicated and who really preached so nicely, unfortunately found his ashram very difficult because he was a young man at the time, and when one is a young man, the sannyas ashram is definitely much more difficult. So it was too much, and because in a way he was sincere, he took shelter of Srila Prabhupada, and one day he sent his danda in the mail to Srila Prabhupada. And he sent it back, and he gave up his sannyas ashram, and Prabhupada became very emotional about it, because he especially liked this sannyasi very much. So he became very emotional about it, and at that time he was just writing the purports in relation to the story of Gajendra, the elephant. And Gajendra, the elephant, who was a very powerful elephant, who was somehow or other enjoying with his wives in a celestial lake, and it was wonderful, but who got attacked by this crocodile under circumstances that were kind of, a little difficult, because an elephant in the water is sort of a little heavy and a little difficult to move about. And the crocodile, of course, was very agile and fast in his element. And also it is said they were fighting, and the crocodile in between could here and there have a snack, could swallow some fish and so on, whereas the elephant was just on a fast, which makes even elephants weak. So therefore, although Gajendra, by his strength on the land, could have probably dealt with this elephant, now that he was not in his element, he was weak. And then Srila Prabhupada takes those purports and begins to explain how everyone must be situated properly. Situated in an ashram, somewhere in Varna-ashram, somewhere in a condition of life where one is feeling strength. And from that position, one can take on the fight with Maya and diligently fight with Maya. So I want to highlight that also on the other side of the issue, and not only put the emphasis on the endeavor, but also that we must situate ourselves nicely, naturally, in a way that we are actually feeling some happiness, feeling strength, getting enough rest, getting emotional support, and all these things that we do need, that human beings require. Because it's easy, it's so easy to say that we are not this body. and so difficult to live it. It is so hard. It is such a fundamental point in our philosophy. We're not this body, and everybody knows it, but to live it is very hard. Very hard. Very, very hard. Because again and again, the body will come with so many demands. So many. So that is our biggest challenge, to actually live according to that understanding that we are not this body, and to fully realize that, and that takes a lot of practice from a position of, well, where at least as much as possible, as much comfort, as much nourishment, as much support as is available, we can take and build up strength from there. Because our devotional service translates into strength. Whatever blessings we receive from the Vaishnavas, who will be pleased with our service, from Krishna, who is pleased with our service, those blessings will translate into spiritual strength. It is there where one gets spiritual strength. Spiritual strength has nothing to do with strength of mind. Yesterday they had a program based on statements that I often make, and with that I realized that I often repeat myself from that program. So I'm almost afraid now to use some of my old examples and tricks. Although some of them are, I like them. Yes, it's not so easy to just give our lives for Krishna. But it is the only way that we can purchase Krishna. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find this reference in relation to Yudhisthira Maharaj, where it says, Mukti dadati bhakti na karichit, liberation I will give you, but bhakti I'm not giving you so easily, I'm hiding it behind my back. Srila Prabhupada explains the verse and says, it's not that it's in the Sanskrit, for the next quiz, it's not in the Sanskrit, but Srila Prabhupada says, in an explanation of the verse, that Krishna is saying, Bhakti, I don't have any, take liberation. Okay? Take it. I'm giving to you. Today. Take it. And the devotee says, no, I don't want liberation. No, I want bhakti. Krishna says, oh, bhakti, that I don't have. And then one has to say, but what you have behind your back, what are you hiding? So Krishna is hiding bhakti. He is not just giving it, he's hiding it. And Krishna has to become purchased. That is the point, and that is highlighted in that particular example of Yudhisthira. So yes, it's like, that is there. So now, in the context of the two things I have highlighted, one is the endeavor, the other is to act according to our appropriate situation. Then from our appropriate situation, we must somehow do something to purchase Krishna. Because Krishna, you can never think, now I have Krishna under my control. I remember, you may think it, but the gopis sometimes think it. They sometimes the gopis are in that mood. Krishna is like, He's our slave. But then that mood changes. In the rasa dance, what pious activities would we have performed that Krishna is just so much surrender to us. So not so. Krishna has to be purchased somehow or other. That element is there for everyone. And therefore everyone has to take on a challenge, but according to one's position, according to what is appropriate for one's position. Not that we look at others and try to imitate and think, I must, you know. Of course, a little competition is also there, and if one does something, why not? We do it also. That exists in the spiritual world. We see that there's, in the 10th canto, there are descriptions how Krishna plays his flute and how various gopis begin to sing, and one sings along with the melody of the flute, and then another one sings like a second voice over that, and there's a competition. Maybe there also. But then at one point, one cannot keep up with others, because everyone has his own Shakti, everyone has some ability, some unique ability. Cannot always keep up with everyone. So what I'm trying to say is, within our natural position, we must do something to purchase Krishna, something special. Something special. It's not cheap. From that explanation of Srila Prabhupada, that Krishna has to be purchased, I'm thinking, something special. So, everyone has the chance, all of us, because somehow or other, our eyes have been opened. Right? That's what it means. The eyes have been opened. It's been told to us, we must do something special. Now the ball is in our court. Entirely. It's entirely up to all of you. And in the end, you know, I'm going to conclude now, but this is this year the 4th birthday party, and this is the official birthday party. But I had already a few others, Mauritius and South Africa and this and that. And in one of them, the point that came up was that in the Chandogya Upanishad there is this reference of the bird, the fish, and the tortoise way, and that the bird is feeding its young by very actively flying up and down to birds, and the little bird is just sitting there with its mouth open, and the fish is supervising its young, but not so actively taking care. The tortoise places its eggs in the warm sand and just meditates on the well-being of its young, but leaves them to fight it out on their own. So the spiritual master is relating to the disciples in all 3 ways. Maybe when I first became a spiritual master and had some disciples, I especially was inclined towards the bird way, you know, and I was like putting so much energy, maximum energy, you know, trying everything possible, bending over backwards and doing somersaults to somehow or other, you know, get the disciples, keep them on the spiritual path, get them going, and so on. And of course, with time, I became exhausted, and there were more disciples. So I started to go for the fish way, you know, and sort of, not in all cases, but more of it, more fishy. And, you know, and I kept an eye, though. But then sometimes even that became impossible. Some people I did not see for quite some time. And just, if there are some who I haven't seen for quite some time and who felt that, yeah, I'm very sad about that, because actually I felt that during that time, I mean, it was the test of the relationship, and I could see that actually, actually my spiritual master didn't really care, and I don't really feel I have a real relationship with my spiritual master. I must express this very sore point in my spiritual life. But I must say no, mistake. Because the meditation is always there. Your ever well-wisher includes that even when the relationship is not so active, the meditation is also there. With the changing of time, and being now in my 60s and so on, I talk about slowing down. I'm not sure if I am slowing down. But I talk more about slowing down than I used to talk about. I never used to talk about slowing down. I hate talking about slowing down. But these days, I begin to like talking about slowing down, and I even sometimes do slow down more often than I used to. So with that in mind, I think that I think that what is required is a certain amount of self-reliance in spiritual life. Is to just take the ball and play it. It's your game. It's your game. The ball, I will definitely give you the ball. Absolutely. I will play it in your direction from time to time, but you have to play it. It's entirely up to you to play the ball. And if you don't play the ball, what can I do? I can. Sometimes I will still come and say, pick up the ball and say, pass it on the ground and say, look, this is how you do it. But most of the time, I may not always do that. Sometimes it may just be, well, what to do? The ball is lying there. It's not moving. So that's, because ultimately, I don't think it is that I'm becoming more cold-hearted as the years are going on. I think it's just Krishna's doing it in that way. And then, of course, he does something to get us to move the ball. That will also do that. But still, we must play the ball. It's our spiritual life. What does Srila Prabhupada say? Everyone's flying his own plane. Well, this was kind of a message after all, I guess. A message, that's what you get. A message because I want to give a message, because it's a message for people who are dear to me. Therefore, I wanted to give this message. I'll read just a translation to prove that I did not deviate from the verse. If those who are attached to demigod worship or sense gratification, I add that, fortunately associate with the devotees, their dormant devotional service and appreciation of the Lord's qualities gradually awaken. In this way they will also engage in Krishna's devotional service and give them the desire for liberation and desire to emerge into the existence of impersonal Brahman. So even all of us, impersonalists, even all of us, addicts to sense gratification by the association of the devotees, can carry on. So I think I've tried to explain this. can see that there is a special message in every verse of the scriptures, in every verse in Srila Prabhupada's books. Thank you very much. I could answer 2 questions, only 2, because of schedules or comments. Yes.
Are there any scars from someone's past, whether it be abuse or drugs or sense gratification or whatever it be,
Irreparable damage.
that cannot be changed in this life?
Yeah, irreparable damage. Are there any scars from previous impious activities, graphic descriptions, drugs, and so on, that are irreparable or cannot be changed in this life? Well, it may be certain drugs have burnt out the brain quite a bit. So some people may have a handicap because of that. Sure, if we misuse the body or the mind, then we can get some damage from that, and then for the rest of our life we have to live with that. And then that may be a little bit of an added austerity, but not an obstacle for getting Krishna consciousness. Somehow or other, Krishna consciousness is available to everyone. But if you damage your brain very much, and you know, and ready for the funny farm on the sunny side or something like that, then that creates a lot of problems in one's. So some people are unfortunately having a lot of additional issues that get in between. That may be. But even if that is the case, even if we have some bad karma, created bad karma, still we have no other alternative than to carry on. Yeah? Even if we're limping on the spiritual path, even if we're jumping on one leg, still we're going to be on the spiritual path. Even if it's on crutches, so carry on. And then one can be glorious. Just like our Bhakti Raghav Swami somehow or other lost his leg, and then he walks with crutches. And then of all the Swamis, he is the one who went on foot to Tirupati for darshan. Yeah? And he goes with his crutches up the mountain. Maharaj, come on. I went by car, and I met him as he came up on his crutches. And he had walked the whole way up the mountain on his crutches. So, even with crutches, one can just stay on the spiritual path, and then one becomes glorious, more glorious. So a handicap can actually turn into an impetus for greater glory. Because if you overcome the handicap, despite of the handicap, you're just carrying on, then that handicap makes you great. So even the scars can become like auspicious in Krishna consciousness. So it's not that we carry with us maybe some terrible inauspiciousness which we foolishly created with us, and that will, you know, always be a little bit of a source of depression in our spiritual life. If only I hadn't taken so many drugs, then I would be able to chant Hare Krishna. No. We can chant Hare Krishna. And if somehow or other we have a disease by which we cannot chant Hare Krishna, then we can hear Hare Krishna. And we can mentally chant Hare Krishna. And if our mind doesn't work, then we can somehow or other look for mercy. There's always spiritual advancement. Yes.
What is best to do to cure scars caused
Oh, scars again. Double scars. Do we have scars?
Okay, I was asked to translate this scar, but in other words, how to cure
How to cure?
relationships, bad
I don't know.
relationships with devotees or
By having good relationships with people. You know, I think focus on the positive. Don't focus on scars. Sometimes, you know, we can read about the anarthas and so on. But if we spend our whole spiritual life just meditating on overcoming anarthas, how can I overcome my anarthas? I mean, my anarthas, my anarthas, my anarthas. Here's the whole list of my anarthas. How can I rise above these anarthas? These anarthas are really like stumbling blocks in my spiritual life. How can I make advancement without these anarthas? It is certainly an element in our philosophy, and one must understand the nature of these anarthas. In Madhurya Kadambini, which is a small book, you can pick it up from across the world, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur really gives a nice explanation about the anarthas, if you don't already have read it. The point is that we do take note of the anarthas, and on how to overcome them. But the essence is, let's just focus on the positive. Avoid the negative activities as much as you can. And meanwhile, where it is still difficult, then we try to just get absorbed in devotional service, and that will purify us. One of my favorite stories, which I sometimes tell all the time, is that my mother used to tell me about two princesses, and one, when she opened her mouth, roses would come out, and the other one, frogs. Now, in our case, since we are Vaishnavas, we are trying for roses, but every once in a while there is the inadvertent frog that just jumps out of the mouth. And then what do? And you think, I shouldn't have said that. I do it all the time. You can't swallow the frog against the regulated principle. So once it's out there, what do? It bounces around in all its ugliness, and people may even put it on the internet. Or quote it in a Vyasa Puja offering. Oh my God. Not only did I say it, now they're quoting it. As some sort of funny pastime, whereas I just put my foot in my mouth. So it happens that we say like that. Well, we try to avoid these things, but it may still happen even when we try to avoid. Then what you do? Keep on trying to avoid, and just get engaged in positive, glorifying Krishna, serving Krishna, devotional service, all these things. Anarthapasanam saksat bhakti yogam adokshaje. It is just, all the anarthas will just automatically be purified in the process of bhakti yoga. All the scars gone. Yay. With that, I thank you very much. See you later. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Thank you.